The Super Speedway Podcast is a Dream Bigger media production. For news, photos, show notes, and information about advertising on the podcast, visit www.thesuperspeedway.com.
3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the Super Speedway.
Read anything that you did last week?
I didn't do shit, Bob.
Well, let me ask you this.
There you go.
The first, right, when we look at it, it almost looks like that you spin out without any contact.
There was contact there.
There was contact there.
That
you felt was avoided.
He came down and chopped me and hit me in the left, my left front, which just spun me out.
Oh, you gotta love the ever-charming Kyle Busch. Kyle speaking with the media at Michigan International Speedway on Friday prior to qualifying. Welcome to episode 122 of the Super Speedway Podcast, recorded Wednesday, August 14th, 2019. I'm your host, Eric Young, and I am not joined, as always, by my co-host, James Cush, tonight. A little bit different podcast tonight. We're going to do things a little bit differently. I'm sitting here in my half-torn-apart podcast studio as I prepare to move. James is on vacation this week, and so I'm doing this solo. However, a lot of stuff for you today. It's probably going to be a typical length podcast. I've got tons of audio from the track this weekend at Michigan International Speedway. I was out there. We have some great coverage on the website, thesuperspeedway.com, if you want to check that out. Ryan Collier, a friend of mine, was out there shooting photos for us. We've got a bunch of photos there. There's more to come. I've seen a lot of them. They're pretty awesome. So a lot of good stuff coming from Michigan International Speedway. Like I said, got a chance to talk to drivers this weekend. Got all kinds of stuff. It was also the playoff cutoff race for the Gander Outdoors Truck Series. So I have audio from them, from most of the playoff drivers in the Truck Series. So we get to do a little Truck Series championship preview this weekend. Something we probably won't get to do for the other two series because I won't be at the track for the cutoff races. But I happen to be at Michigan International Speedway this weekend, so we have that. First, to get things started, it was the Consumers Energy 400 at Michigan International Speedway this weekend for the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series. Kevin Harvick comes home with the win, gets his second win of the season. Didn't look great throughout the race, but he was there. Had a couple other cars that kind of led the way a little bit and did a little bit more domination, but yeah, so Kevin Harvick gets the win. He passed Joey Logano with 18 laps to go to take the lead. He'd hang on for the win. Again, second Cup race of the season, second August race in a row at Michigan. Let's get into some of the post-race audio. We've got lots of it, as I said. First, Kevin Harvick was asked post-race about his strategy on the final restart with 48 laps to go.
You know, I felt like the most important pass was the 2. I felt like he was, if he got around those guys before I did, he'd be more difficult to pass. I felt like the 22 fell off a lot as we got into the second half of the run compared to our cars. So, you know, he did a good job of putting himself in the right spots when I was behind him, and eventually just kind of guessed wrong, and I was able to to get up underneath him there, coming through the middle of 3 and 4 and side draft and finish the pass. So it was definitely I needed to get a good restart, and it's really, it's kind of short term everything. You need to have short term memory when you get done with something and move on, and on the restart it's just one lap at a time, and really one situation at a time to be able to try to put yourself in the best position that you can lap after lap.
It certainly wasn't all smooth sailing for Harvick during the race. He did have to overcome a flat tire earlier in the race. He talked about that in the post-race press conference as well.
I knew I had a problem going down the backstretch, and I knew that I needed to just slow down and figure out what was going on. And obviously the tire was flat, and I had a hard time getting slowed down enough to get it to the bottom of the racetrack. And my main concern was just not grinding the splitter off. If the splitter was gone, we would have been done. So, I mean, I just, once I got it under control, Timmy told him we had a problem, and I wanted to make sure I got to the bottom of the racetrack without hitting another car and get to pit road speed. And once I got there, I just told them I had a flat right front tire. They put 2 right sides on it and put it back on, and we kept going. And that was literally the extent of the conversation. And we moved on. They told me it had a cut in it, and it went all the way through the tire, and we never talked about it again for the rest of the day. So it's I told you guys on Friday, the radio button is poison, so I try not to use it.
Finally, for the second year in a row, Harvick celebrated the victory after the race at Michigan with his son, Keelan. Keelan met him at the car and climbed in, actually put a helmet on, climbed in, got to do some post-race burnouts with his dad. Harvick was talking to the media a little bit Friday, talked about his start in racing, that he started around 5 years old. So I got a chance to ask Harvick about Keelan's future in racing during the post-race press conference.
Eric Young with the Superspeedway.com. Kevin, you said on Friday that you were 5 years old, I think, when you started racing.
Yeah.
Keelan's 7. Has he done anything? Have you thought about doing anything? Any plans there?
He's got a go-kart that he drives. He quit baseball so he could go drive it more this fall, so I guess we're going to be going to the go-kart track more.
Denny Hamlin had a decent race all day and came home second after several drivers had to pit for fuel late in the race. He was asked post-race on pit road whether there was anything he could have done to catch Kevin Harvick for the win.
I mean, he was pretty fast, but, we certainly were a long-run car. Every time the runs went long, we were extremely fast. I mean, we saw in the first run how fast we came up through the field. So just needed it to the sun to be out more, honestly, to play in our favor. Once it got to be wide open there at the very end when the track pulled off, the cars that had that raw speed in qualifying, it played into their hand.
Kyle Larson said post-race he was surprised to finish in third place. He was asked about his strategy the last run of the race.
No, we were just trying to, pass those people in front of us, but save enough fuel, and thankfully I was able to, really be slow enough early in that run to save fuel without really even knowing I was or trying to, and then save a little bit there at the end to get to the finish. So, they were the 19 and 12 ran out in front of me and got by them. I think I could have got by them regardless, but it was a good finish. I crossed our finish line. I wasn't expecting to hear third, so it was happy bar today, good points day, well above the cut line now. So solid few weeks here.
Finally, Martin Truex Jr. had a pretty good day in the 19 car, Auto Owners Insurance car. He led 43 laps on the day. In his 500th start on Sunday, he had a special paint scheme and a tuxedo fire suit. However, he started the day with a handicap, having to go from the back of the field for the start because his car failed pre-race tech inspection 3 times. He was able to battle back to win the first stage of the day, almost won the second stage. He talked about that after the race.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's always easiest to come through the field that first run, and we certainly did a good job of that, and then we were able to drive up and take the lead. Thought we had the best car at that point in the race, probably halfway through, and then, like I said, it just we got too far back there on those last couple of restarts, and everybody has time to work on their cars all day long, and it just gets harder and harder to pass. So that last run, we were stuck for way too long in the wrong lane, and we lost too many spots on the restart, and then we had to get them one at a time. So we're running out of time there.
Brad Keselowski had one of the dominant cars on the day, leading 66 laps of the day. Joey Logano led 52. Keselowski had issues later in the race, ran out of fuel at the end, I believe, and also had a tire issue. Joey Logano also had to pit for fuel at the end. Joey Logano finished 17th. Brad Keselowski finished 19th, so rough day for those guys. Turned into a little bit of a fuel mileage race at the end. Gave us a little bit of excitement. Other drivers that struggled on the day. Jimmy Johnson had trouble. He had a crash. Knocked him back quite a bit in the point standings. And Clint Boyer also had trouble with a crash. He finished 37th on the day, so really bad day for both of those guys. 2 guys that need to do well in the point standings. We'll talk about the points in just a moment. Clint Boyer barely hanging on. Jimmy Johnson on the outside looking in now as we get close to the playoffs. Only a few more races to go. A couple drivers having good days. We mentioned Kyle Larson. We got to hear from him. 3rd place finish for Larson. Great day for him. Daniel Suarez finishes 5th. Kyle Busch finishes 6th, which, Kyle Busch in 6th isn't that great, but Kyle Busch at Michigan in 6th is pretty good. Ryan Preece gets a 7th place finish. William Byron 8th. Chase Elliott 9th. Alex Bowman 10th. Ty Dillon was able to race up to 11th. Ryan Newman working on those points, getting a 12th place finish. Good run for him. He was able to make some ground up. Austin Dillon is able to salvage a 13th place finish after crashing on the front stretch, spinning through the grass. So great finish for him as well. Eric Jones, our pick like every week to be a top 5 guy, struggled. He finished 18th on the day. A lot of this has to do with pit stops at the end, though, as people were trying to stretch the fuel, and a lot of them couldn't quite do it. Harvick was able to and got the win. So that's how things wrapped up at Michigan. On that note, let's talk about the playoffs. Here's what we got right now. Kyle Larson, 13th in the playoffs, 71 points to the good. Eric Jones, 70 points to the good and 14th. Both those guys looking pretty good. It's going to take a lot to get them out, so I think they're pretty solid right now with just 3 races to go heading into Bristol. Obviously, anything can happen, but they'd have to have a couple pretty bad days. So both of them working good on the points to get that done. Ryan Newman, as we mentioned, he's pointing his way in. He's 16 to the good in 15th place. Not comfortable yet by any means. Still a lot of shaking up can happen there. But Ryan's trending to the good right now, which is always good to be doing 3 races before the playoffs. Clint Boyer, we mentioned, just barely hanging on. He is 6 points to the good. Daniel Suarez is outside looking in 17th, six points behind Boyer. And Jimmy Johnson drops to 18th, drops 2 spots in the points. He is 12 points out of the cutoff. Not looking good for Jimmy Johnson right now. An abysmal day, I think, is about the way you can describe it at Michigan. Hit the wall early, had tire issues multiple times as a result, and just never was able to do anything. Jimmy Johnson, as we said, able to salvage a 34th place finish, but it wasn't pretty by any means. Meanwhile, Paul Menard sits in 19th, 53 points back. Chris Buescher has moved into 20th, 73 points back. He's able to push Ricky Stenhouse Jr. back a little bit more. Stenhouse going into Bristol this weekend. One of his favorite tracks. Definitely going to have to work to get a win there. Stenhouse is out without a win. There's pretty much no way he's making it in. So that is your look at the playoffs right now. Let's talk some news, because we had some news this week. Figures James isn't here. We actually have some stuff to talk about. It's been pretty quiet the last few weeks. First of all, let's get into leftovers from Watkins Glen. That was the talk of the town at Michigan International Speedway on Friday during press conferences. I have some audio from Jimmy Johnson, but I'm not going to play it because Jimmy and Ryan were still kind of throwing barbs a little bit during post-race or during pre-race stuff. Johnson had a media availability in the media center, and he spoke at length, tried to get away from the questions, but of course everybody wanted to ask. Spoke at length about how he was upset about Blaney's comments, or upset at Blaney still, and mostly upset because Blaney hadn't approached him after the race. I mean, he did at the race, but he felt that Blaney should have come and talked to him during the week or gave him a phone call or something, and Blaney didn't. Blaney told Bob Pockris during qualifying, I missed Blaney. I was doing another thing. I was doing an interview for the radio, so I wasn't able to be there for him. But he mentioned during qualifying that he was upset with Jimmy because of the comments Jimmy made to NBC after the race. Well, long story short, I guess Blaney showed up at Jimmy's trailer on Friday night, I believe it was, with a couple tall boys. They settled things over some beer, and everything supposedly is all good between Jimmy Johnson and Ryan Blaney. We did not see any issues during the race at all, so that was good. Meanwhile, Kyle Busch did not speak to media after Watkins Glen, so of course everybody had questions for him. I did catch a little bit of his media availability during qualifying, and you caught a little bit of it during the intro where Bob Pockris asked him about his regrets from last weekend. But Kyle also spoke. He was asked during the media availability what he thought of the fact that both drivers he had trouble with last weekend, with being William Byron and Bubba Wallace, both of them were drivers that previously drove for him. Here's what he had to say.
You know, it's kind of surprising, I guess, that you get into it with 2 former drivers, because I guess you would kind of expect a little bit more or different from them than you would, say, some other competitors out there. So I guess I just wasn't, just didn't quite get that. But overall, you know, as far as conversations went today, there's a better understanding between the both of them. So move forward.
And with that, we got some silly season news this week as the shoes are starting to drop on that whole deal. There's a lot of question marks for next season. One of those is Clint Boyer, who has been speculated may be without a ride after this season. His contract is up with Stewart-Haas at the end of this year. However, Adam Stern, our friend with the Sports Business Journal, who always, I think it's Sports Business Journal. If I got it wrong, I'm sorry, Adam. But he's always great source of information, especially this time of year during silly season. He reports that Clint Boyer has a solid chance of returning to Stewart-Haas next year. Likely will take a pay cut, but it is expected that that Boyer will probably return, although no extension has been reached. Of course, that makes you wonder what will happen with Cole Custer, who is waiting in the wings in the Xfinity Series, whether he'll have another opportunity in the Cup Series, whether Stuart Haas is going to hang on to him, or whether somebody else is on the chopping block at Stuart Haas. I don't see that happening at this point, but Boyer's ride was definitely the best one earmarked for Custer, so it'd be interesting to see what happens in that whole deal, but it looks like Boyer will be back in the 14 car next season. More news in the silly season. Matt DiBenedetto is not expected to return to the 95 car next season. Of course, we heard him pleading at Watkins Glen to essentially keep his ride, which leads you to believe that there were issues there, and it's not a surprise to hear that he probably will not be returning. Also of note, Eric Jones is reportedly close on his contract, which would keep him in the 20 car next season. Of course, that leaves no opening at Joe Gibbs Racing for Christopher Bell, who is waiting in the wings and certainly ready to move to the Cup Series. We've talked about it on the podcast multiple times that we expect Christopher Bell to be making the jump to the Cup Series this year. So it looks like Bell probably won't be in the 20 car, which means he will likely be in the 95 car if things go the way we expect. So very good possibility we'll see Christopher Bell in the 95 next season. Matt DiBenedetto on the outside looking in there. However, the last piece in the silly season news today, David Reagan has announced. He announced actually earlier today as we're recording this that he will be retiring at the end of the season to spend more time with his family. Still plans to run some part-time races in NASCAR and other series, but he will not be racing full-time. That, of course, leaves an opening at Front Row Motorsports that they intend to fill. They still will field that car next year by the looks of things. So maybe Matt DiBenedetto could make his way over there. There's certainly going to be some high-profile drivers that are looking for rides, more than likely. So I would assume that seat will be pretty popular right now with the talent that's moving into our series and the talent that hasn't left yet. So really interesting year as far as silly season's concerned. I think we're going to see another instance possibly of some drivers going before they should be. It's kind of sad to see, but that is the nature of the beast now. We've got a lot of good drivers waiting to come in, and certainly drivers that are ready, like Christopher Bell and Cole Custer, among others. Ross Chastain's another one. You got a lot of guys that are certainly ready to come to the Cup Series anytime. Other news in the Cup Series, NASCAR, actually Goodyear announced today that NASCAR will increase the diameter of their tires for the 2021 season. They'll be 18 inches instead of the current 15 inches. The tires are also likely to have a lower profile than they currently have, so they won't be as tall from the tire to the rim. Basically, trying to bring them more in line with production cars, as we've kind of seen the talk is with this new Gen 7 car, trying to bring things more close to what you see in the showroom when you go shopping for cars. So interesting thing, we don't really know what this means. The tire will also likely be wider, which means there's going to be more contact with the track, should be more grip, but who knows? There's so many things up in the air. I know I was on Twitter earlier today, and there's a bunch of people with opinions on it, and it's like, come on, guys. Nobody even knows what this means yet. Nobody knows. So give it a chance. Again, just trying to make things, people want these things to be closer to production cars, and then you do it, and then they complain because they're closer to production cars. So I don't know, guys. You just can't make everybody happy. NASCAR is trying to move things into the future without alienating the past. Certainly a lot of old technology on these cars. It is time to get some newer technology. It's time to get with the times and change some stuff up here and make the sport relevant again. So that's it for our news this week. As I said, lots of stuff this week. A little bit crazy in the silly season department. I'm sure we'll see a lot more of that in the coming weeks, especially with the cutoff coming very soon at Indianapolis in just a couple of weeks. That a lot of times once the playoffs hit, you see a lot of these shoes dropping because, people aren't in the playoffs now. We can make announcements and start planning for next season. So lots of stuff coming there, especially I'm sure that the news segment will be a little bit busier over the next few weeks. And with that, we're going to do a new segment that we haven't done here before. We're going to break down, we'll probably do something similar to this with the Cup Series because it's the Cup Series and that tends to be what we focus on here on the podcast. However, it was the cutoff race at Michigan International Speedway this weekend for the Gander Outdoor Truck Series, and we got our final 8 that are going to make the playoffs for the 2019 season. And it was definitely interesting. A lot of talk this week about whether 8 spots is enough in the Truck Series. I won't get too much into it, but I feel like 8 is plenty. I think it's interesting that there are good drivers that didn't make the playoffs. That's the way it should be. I think the Cup Series is 16 spots. That's too many. I think we need to cut that down to 10 or 12 and make it interesting. We're going to have some good guys. Well, we're going to have some popular guys that are not going to make the playoffs this season, more than likely in the Cup Series. But that doesn't usually happen with 16 drivers. The first round, I almost hate the first round because it's like, if you're anything, you're going to make the first round. So I wouldn't mind seeing the Cup Series cut down a little bit. Certainly don't need to expand the Truck Series, but we got to hear from a bunch of the drivers, got a chance to talk to many of them after the race at Michigan that have qualified for the playoffs. So we're going to run through that right now, give you some audio, give you what they think about their position and how things are going for the playoffs for them. First of all, Matt Crafton's our first one here. Let's see. Crafton finished, where you at, Matt? 10th place at Michigan. He clinched the final spot in the playoffs. He was the second of only 2 drivers that did not have a win in the playoffs, so he got in on points. He was nervous all day, as there were a couple drivers that were running pretty well that if they would have won, they would have knocked him out. And he was asked about how he felt after the race now that he's locked in the playoffs.
When all 3 of them, when the 4, the 99, and the 18 were all racing up there, I'm like, oh, I better get going here and try to break this fight up. And we got there, and I was definitely doing everything I could to shuffle them out and not make sure that none of the other guys that were in 12th or 14th or 15th in points, like some of the guys were, would win a race and beat us. But there. So all in all, I mean, like I said, it stinks. I mean, one I really got to say sorry to is Ankrum on that we had a phenomenal restart before that, and I shoved him out to the lead. I think he just spun his tires just a little bit when I got to him, and I went to try to help him, and there's nothing ill intended there. It was just trying to help him along and shove him out to the lead, maybe get me the second. But like I said, I hate it. I know I was trying. I know.
Talking to Brett
I was a little gun shy after the last one, Yeah.
Were you worried?
Was I worried? I was like, damn, do I push Brett right here? I mean, do I really get to hit rear bumper and push him and him spin the tires? And at the end of the day, I'm like, man, if I turn him sideways and this 18 could win the race. And just tried to be smart right there at the end. I tried to get to the rear bumper and just stalled about 6 foot off the bumper.
One of those drivers that Crafton was talking about that had a chance to win and get into the playoffs was Sheldon Creed. Sheldon Creed did not make the playoffs. He finished second in the race. He needed a win, obviously, to make it. I got to talk with him about that following the race.
Sheldon, you were close there. You had a chance at the end. Is there anything you could have done differently?
I don't know. It's so hard in the air, and I made a few mistakes there that kind of got us behind, and then they started wrecking and ended up restarting 6th there, and you had to be on the top. The top was everything, and I'm surprised the 18 ended up actually giving me the top. I figured he would stay lower, or he would stay higher, and he gave me the top. So, man, I don't know. I could have tried backing up to 3rd. I don't know if he would have tried to get side by side with me. There's so many things, like you need help, but then you got to be good enough in the air to get to him, and I was damn near wide open that last 2 laps, and just driving my ass off really to stay with him, and I got within a car of him. I just needed a little bit more.
After the reset in points with the playoffs, Brett Moffitt becomes your points leader. Brett is also the defending champion after an unexpected championship win last season. I got a chance to talk to him after the race about his change in position this season as the playoffs begin.
Last year you were kind of the underdog. This year you're going in as the defending champ, one of the favorites. How is the strategy different for you, or is it different for you going into this playoffs?
It's the same. You gotta take things as they go. Everyone can have a plan until the race starts, and it's just you gotta execute your day according to how your performance is. And I think a lot of people get caught up in, you need a plan for this, plan for that, but really you gotta wait till the green flag drops and see how your truck's running, and then decide. Especially in races 2 and 3 of the series of races before people get cut, you really got to evaluate where everyone's at. If you're not in a must-win situation, you got to go for stage points and just solidify your spot. Where the guys that are getting desperate, they're going to start short pitting the stages and try to get up front, and it's just nothing is the right answer. It's just whatever works out that day.
Johnny Sauter had trouble on pit road during the race, finished 12th as a result. He, however, is in the playoffs based on a win at Dover earlier this season, so he will qualify and makes it in. However, he struggled at many points throughout the season. I got a chance to talk to him about that after the race.
Johnny, how are you feeling going into the playoffs?
Not very good. I mean, we just can't seem to get nothing going. Just had a really bad run of bad luck, quite frankly, over the last couple months. So it's obviously great to be able to say you're in the playoffs, but unless something changes and it keeps going the way that it's going, I don't know. I mean, just got to keep digging. I mean, keep fighting and keep clawing, and that's I know that's what my guys will do, and that's what we'll do.
Ross Chastain was taken out early in the same pit road incident that involved Sauter. Despite not collecting points during the first part of the season, Chastain is qualified for the playoffs with a win earlier this season and by finishing in the top 20 in points. I got a chance to ask him after the race if he considers himself an underdog going into the playoffs.
I sure like to think so. Yeah, for sure. I like that. I hope that these guys, just think that our stuff was a fluke and that'll be fine. So, it's one of those things that we just have to go execute in the races coming up.
Does today put a dent on things because it wasn't nothing of your making, obviously, but what does today do, or you just put it behind you and just say it was a fluke?
Nah, it was just a fluke. We brought the fastest truck here. We executed. We were qualified on the pole, led every lap until there was contact while we were basically sitting still. So, you're going to have those. That's big-time auto racing, and we're big enough boys and girls. We're mad. We're definitely mad that it took us out. Hate that it happened, but when we've been mad, we've came back even better. So I'm excited about Bristol on Thursday.
Grant Enfinger was the only other driver to get in the playoffs without a win. He wins the regular season championship, finishing first in points without a win on the season. He was able to come home. Let's see here. Where are you at, Grant? He finished 7th on the day at Michigan International Speedway. After the race, he was asked whether he thought he was a favorite to win the title.
No, I don't think we're a favorite right now. I feel like we're capable of becoming a favorite. We haven't peaked. We've been steady all year. If we can hit our stride these next 7 races, then yeah, we can be a favorite. But I don't really see a favorite right now. I see 3 or 4 of us running pretty good most weeks. We just happen to be probably the consistent ones. We haven't found our way to victory lane. We have had the speed to do it. We still got some work to do.
Lastly, one of my favorites, Ben Rhodes, had a fast truck all day, but contact and a flat tire ended his chances at the win and a playoff berth, although he was one of the faster trucks for sure. Certainly had a chance at the win. He limped home to a 23rd place finish at Michigan. He talked about that after the race.
Just kind of been the story of the season. If we didn't have bad luck, we'd have no luck at all, to be honest. This makes like the 8th race this year where something crazy just happens that seems to be the only ones that that we're fighting it and takes us out. So we can't really control that. I mean, we're going to try to go back and all the braces are going to be off the freaking truck because we're not going to have anything get hit and fall into the tire again. If not, I'll take them off myself. We just gotta do what we can to control what we can. But I mean, just absolutely crazy that we had the truck to beat, should have won the race, and should be in the playoffs, and stuff like this happens.
So, not in the playoffs, but winning races is still a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And you have had trucks good enough to win races.
Yes. Yeah.
So, just tell us about your level of confidence or anticipation over the playoffs with your opportunities.
Well, I'm on a mission now. These guys in the playoffs have something to lose, and I don't. So the next 7 races that we have, we're not racing for points. We're not racing for anything but wins. So I'm going to try my best to be like Kyle Busch and do crazy pit stops, crazy strategy, and do everything we can to get a win. Don't really care who's in the way. Don't care who's in the playoffs, who's racing for a championship. We're going to get our wins because we've had so much bad stuff happen that we just can't have any excuses. We're going to get the wins.
And there you have it. There is your Gander Outdoors Truck Series playoff preview, courtesy of the Super Speedway and Michigan International Speedway. Big thanks to those guys for allowing us to be out at the track and talk to the drivers. It was was a pretty cool deal. It was neat to see a playoff cutoff race. That was pretty cool. Definitely brought up the intensity for the Gander Outdoors Truck Series at Michigan, which race is already pretty intense generally. So adding intensity to it was pretty great. With that, let's look ahead to this weekend. The Gander Outdoors Truck Series gets things kicked off Thursday night to start things off at Bristol Motor Speedway. It is night race weekend. The NASCAR Cup Series will run the Bass Pro Shops NRA night race from Bristol Motor Speedway on Saturday night. We are going to make our picks right now, and James, unfortunately, is off, and he did not give me any picks for this week. I actually checked in with him to see if he could send me some. He said, "No, I don't have any ready. I haven't been on my phone." So we're going to pick for James this week. So James actually gets the first pick. So he's going to sacrifice his first pick by allowing us to pick for him. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to make sure he gets a really good pick for this weekend at Bristol Motor Speedway. I'm going to go with Jamie McMurray. Jamie McMurray seems like a great pick for James. I think Jamie was generally pretty good at Bristol. He's not racing this weekend, but we're going to pick Jamie McMurray for James. I'm going to go the easy route, especially since James isn't here to complain about it. I'm going to pick Kyle Busch because it's Bristol Motor Speedway. It's Bristol, baby. You have to pick Kyle Busch. He's the dominant driver there, one of the best ever at Bristol. He's done the sweep how many times? I say Kyle Busch gets the win this weekend. I also get first shot at the dark horse pick. My dark horse pick going to be Matt DiBenedetto, who likes Bristol Motor Speedway, runs well there, and he's got something to prove now, hoping for a ride next season from the looks of things out of his current ride. So Matt DiBenedetto I picked to run well at Bristol as my dark horse. James gets the final dark horse pick. We're going to give him Danica Patrick, right? Danica also not racing this weekend. I know James is a big Danica Patrick fan, so we'll give him Danica for the win in the dark horse category. So there we go. Let's do some shout outs really quick. We have I got to run into Brandon Crowd at Michigan International Speedway this weekend. Had a lot of fun chatting with him. Actually did a did a podcast with him on Friday after the Truck Series race. That is available on the channel. If you haven't listened to that, check it out. Brandon with the Lap Traffic podcast, pretty cool guy. Got to meet him at Chicagoland last year or earlier this year, and I've been chatting with him ever since. So very cool podcast. He's got some good stuff over there. Does a lot of stuff with driver interviews and things like that. Has a guest every week. It's worth checking out if you guys haven't. Probably more worth checking out than our podcast, but we certainly appreciate you guys listening to us as well. Let's talk Fantasy League now. I was going to skip over this because some guy named James won this week at Michigan. Come on, James. I thought I did so well. I was pretty happy with my picks. I believe I won Michigan in June. I think this was the one that I got. I can't remember for sure, but I was pretty confident. I was pretty happy. I had Harvick, of course. Definitely wanted to pick him. Of course, I had Jones, and that didn't help me out very much. Managed to get second place with 185 points, but James comes home with 200 to get the win this weekend at Michigan. Justin 713 in third with 184, just 1 point behind me. Ranger Runyon 1 point back from him in fourth with 183. So us three all finished pretty close together. Freight Train 295, which is Todd, comes home with 161 points in fifth. Hurricane Ditka in sixth with 149 points, and Scoters finishes seventh with 140 points. Where does that put us in the overall? Well, let me click it and check it. I'm still sixth, just flailing away back here. James still in fifth. Justin 713 still our leader, 4,075 points. Ranger Runyon right behind him, 4,074. It's a 1 point difference for the regular season champion in our playoffs. Todd Henry, Freight Train 295 in third, 3,923 points. 3877 for Hurricane Ditka behind him in fourth. Then James, then me, and then Scoters bringing up the rear, 3,520 points. We're getting down to it. 3 races to go, and then we reset for the playoffs. James is our playoff expert, our fantasy expert, so I don't know. I can't tell you what's going to happen. Apparently, everything's going to change, and we get to pick the same driver every week if we want to. I don't know. We'll see how that goes, but that's coming up. We did reach out last week and kind of ask people if they wanted to keep doing fantasy last week. I got a couple people that messaged me and said they'd like to do it again. So we'll think about it. I did some research on DraftKings, which I think is pretty cool the way they do it, but that is a paid league, and we're not doing a paid league. So probably end up back at NASCAR next year unless we can find something better. If you guys have any suggestions for good NASCAR fantasy leagues that are better than NASCAR.com, let us know, and we'll certainly check them out. Maybe we'll look at one of those for next season. Be good to know now so we can check it out the rest of the season, see how things go, and see if it's worth checking one out. So again, hit us up on Twitter, send us a message on Facebook, something. Let us know what you think. And if you're just dying to do the fantasy next year, maybe you didn't join us this year, Ryan Collier, I'm talking to you. If you didn't join us this year, you want to do it next year, hit us up and we'll, I guess we'll do it again, as much as I hate fantasy. So with that is it for us today. I'm glad everybody joined us. A little bit shorter show, I guess, now that I look at the time. But lots of driver audio in there. Hope you guys enjoyed that. If you did, let me know. Hit me up. Tell me that you liked it. Give us a review on iTunes, all that stuff. A lot of work doing it this way. It takes a lot longer to record because I'm basically jumping in and out. I didn't do it live like we normally do. But pretty cool. Pretty neat to be able to talk to the drivers and get that for you. Love the Truck Series preview. Looking forward to the Truck Series. We don't talk about the Truck Series a lot on the podcast, but to me, that's my favorite series of the three. I think the Truck Series puts on pretty much the best show every weekend. So not the greatest at sitting here talking to myself, so I'm going to wrap things up. James will be back next week. We'll get things sort of back to normal, except I don't know where we'll be as far as the studio. Hopefully we'll meet up together and do one in person. And I think I'm going to be a little bit closer to him and kind of on the on the move for the next couple of weeks. So with that, if you guys want to find us on social media, you can find James at James Cush on Twitter. And James never spells it, so if you don't know how to spell his name, it's JamesKuch on Twitter. You can find me at TSuperspeedway on Twitter. I'm done covering races for the season, unless something happens to fall into my lap, but I'll still be tweeting a little bit throughout the year. Definitely hit me up on there. You can find the podcast on Facebook at facebook.com/TheSuperspeedway. Our website address is thesuperspeedway.com. If you haven't checked it out, check it out this week. There's all kinds of cool stuff on there. Some great photos from Ryan Collier this weekend at Michigan International Speedway. He did an awesome job for us. I'm hoping to maybe have him come to another track again next season. But great work for him for his first NASCAR race shooting. It was pretty great. And he had a blast. So glad he got to do that. Tried to get him on the podcast. He kind of chickened out on me, and then he would have done it, but just didn't have a chance to do it at the track on Sunday. So, yeah, check that out for sure. Again, thesuperspeedway.com. There's also a couple stories on there from the weekend. You can find all the podcasts on there. Show notes, if you want to see what we talked about, you can click through those. Click on the links that for any of the articles we discussed today or in the past. Those are all on there as well. You can find the podcast on iTunes, Google Play, and SoundCloud. If you like what you hear, you want to become a part of the show, or you want to help us get to the track, help us do things, help us whatever, hit us up on Patreon at patreon.com/thesuperspeedway and become a patron today. We go to Bristol Motor Speedway this weekend. 3 night races, some of the best racing of the year. The Truck Series is there on Thursday night. Friday night is the Xfinity Series and the Cup Series. Finishes it off on Saturday night with the Bass Pro Shops NRA night race for Bristol Motor Speedway. We'll be back next week to talk about it. James will be back. Hopefully things will be sort of back to normal. Until then, everybody, let's go racing.